We are not days away. We are not weeks away. We are hours away. Hours before the sky turns red. Hours before something ancient rises back into human awareness. And if you're here listening to this right now, understand this clearly. You were not pulled to this message by accident. For thousands of years, a warning echoed quietly through civilizations, not shouted, not forced, whispered, a prophecy tied to a blood moon, a moment so easy to ignore that most people always did. Generations watched the sky darken and return to normal without ever asking what shifted beneath the surface. But this time feels different, because this eclipse isn't arriving into calm waters. It's descending into pressure, into global tension, into personal turning points, into quiet collapses happening behind closed doors. Leadership structures are shaking, systems are wobbling, relationships are reaching breaking points. And maybe, if you're honest, something in your own life has been cracking open too. That's not a coincidence. Throughout history, when total lunar eclipses have appeared during unstable eras, humanity only understood their significance in hindsight. We always look back and say, that was the turning point. But rarely do we recognize it while it's happening. Until now, March 3rd is not just a date on a calendar. It's a pressure point in time, a hinge, a moment suspended between what has been and what refuses to continue unchanged. And here's what almost nobody is saying. This prophecy was never about destruction. It was about activation. There are ancient beliefs that a blood moon does something subtle but irreversible. It pulls forward the agreements you made with yourself long before you understood their cost. Think about that. Every person carries silent contracts, decisions formed in moments of pain, promises whispered internally when life felt overwhelming. I'll never depend on anyone again. I have to survive this alone. If I stay strong, I won't get hurt. You may not remember making them, but you've been living by them. They shape your reactions, your boundaries, your fears, your ambitions. They quietly direct the architecture of your identity. And what if this eclipse is not here to punish you, but to review those contracts? What if the red moon acts like a spotlight, illuminating the vows you've been unconsciously honoring for years? This is where the prophecy stops being dramatic and becomes personal. Because when awareness arrives, choice follows, and choice is power. The moon turning red is not the miracle. The miracle is the moment you recognize that you don't have to keep living by outdated agreements. That is the shift. Look around you. Notice the intensity building globally. Notice the unpredictability. Notice how conversations feel heavier, how decisions feel more urgent. It's as if something is compressing time itself. That compression creates clarity. Pressure reveals structure. And this date, March 3rd, carries a pattern humanity has always understood instinctively. Beginning, middle, end, past, present, future, thought, word, action. When those triads fall out of alignment, life feels scattered, disjointed, forced. But when they synchronize, even slightly, momentum becomes undeniable. This eclipse doesn't create chaos. It amplifies what already exists. If your inner world is divided, the friction will feel louder. If your inner world is aligning, the path forward will feel unmistakable. That's why this moment feels electric. Because whether you're ready or not, something is surfacing, not to scare you, not to overwhelm you, but to wake you. An awakening is rarely comfortable at first. It feels like tension, like awareness you can't unsee, like a quiet knowing rising in your chest that something must change. The ancient prophecy was never about predicting events. It was about recognizing inflection points, moments where direction shifts even if the scenery hasn't caught up yet. We are standing inside one of those moments. The sky will darken, the moon will bleed red, and millions will glance upward without understanding that the real eclipse is happening within them. The question is not whether something is changing, it is whether you are conscious enough to feel it, because once you do, you can't go back to sleep. Now, the real question begins. If something is awakening, what exactly is it waking up? Because the eclipse is not just an event in the sky. It is a mirror, and mirrors do not create anything new. They reveal what was already standing there. There is an old idea preserved in fragments across cultures. The belief that certain celestial alignments act like inheritance nights, moments when unfinished agreements rise to the surface demanding acknowledgement. Not agreements signed on paper, agreements signed in emotion. Think back, not to a specific memory, but to a feeling. A moment when you were hurt, a moment when you felt abandoned, a moment when you decided quietly and firmly, never again. That sentence became law. Children make vows with the intensity of survival. Teenagers carve identities out of pain. Adults build entire personalities around coping mechanisms that once kept them safe. And then we forget. We forget that the strength we're so proud of might have been built on a wound. We forget that independence can sometimes be disguised isolation. We forget that control can be fear wearing armor. But the body remembers. The nervous system remembers. The subconscious never forgets the contracts it signed under pressure. And this is where the blood moon becomes deeply personal. Because when the Earth's shadow crosses the moon, something symbolic happens. Light is filtered, distortion is reduced, excess glare fades, and what remains is raw tone. This eclipse acts like that filter. It strips away distraction. It lowers the emotional noise just enough for you to hear the quiet vows still directing your life. Don't trust. Don't be vulnerable. Don't fail. Don't need. Those internal rules may have protected you once, but are they protecting you now? This is not about guilt. It is about awareness. Because awareness changes the contract. The prophecy was never about the sky turning red as a warning of doom. It was about the moment a human being realizes they have been living on autopilot and decides to take the wheel back. That realization is not gentle. It hits like clarity. You start noticing patterns repeating. You start recognizing why certain conflicts keep resurfacing. You begin to see that what you call bad luck may actually be old agreements seeking reinforcement. And suddenly, the eclipse feels less like spectacle and more like review. March 3rd carries the symbolism of structure. 3 and 3, thought, word, action. When those three are misaligned, life feels like friction. You think one thing, say another, do something else entirely. That fragmentation drains power. But when thought, word, and action begin to align, even slightly, momentum becomes undeniable. Energy stops leaking. Decisions become clean. Movement feels natural instead of forced. This is what amplification truly means. The eclipse does not create alignment. It magnifies whatever alignment or misalignment already exists. If you are divided internally, you will feel the tension rise. If you are beginning to integrate, you will feel acceleration. That's why some people experience eclipse seasons as chaos, while others experience them as breakthrough. Same sky, different internal architecture. And here is the sharper truth. You cannot unknow what becomes visible during this window. Once you see the contract, you have two options. Continue honoring it unconsciously, or consciously renegotiate it. That renegotiation is the real prophecy, not fate, not destiny carved in stone, choice. And choice is terrifying when you realize you actually have it, because it means you can no longer blame timing, circumstances, or other people for patterns you now recognize, the blood moon does not demand change. It offers awareness. And awareness creates responsibility. That is why this moment feels heavy for so many. Not because something catastrophic is coming, but because clarity is arriving. And clarity removes excuses. The old contract says, stay small to stay safe. The new awareness whispers, you are no longer that version of yourself. The old contract says, survive. The new awareness asks, are you ready to live? That is the internal shift taking place beneath the red sky. This is not mystical fantasy. It is psychological evolution under cosmic symbolism. The eclipse is simply the clock striking the hour, and the hour has arrived. Now step back. Zoom out beyond your life, beyond this year, beyond this century, because what's happening on March 3rd is not isolated. It is part of a rhythm older than empires. Long before modern headlines turned eclipses into ominous clickbait, ancient civilizations tracked them with relentless precision, not with fear, with discipline. The Maya did not panic when the moon darkened. They calculated. They charted patterns across generations, mapping eclipses with mathematical accuracy that still unsettles historians today. To them, an eclipse was not a curse. It was a revelation window, a moment when illusion thinned. The Babylonians recorded lunar eclipses alongside political transitions, leadership instability, and public unrest, not because they believed the moon caused chaos, but because they observed correlation. When power structures were already fragile, eclipses exposed the cracks. When rulers were unstable, truth surfaced. When tension was building, something tipped. The eclipse didn't create the fracture, it illuminated it. And that distinction matters. Because illumination feels dramatic when you've been standing in dim light for too long. There is also a cycle most people never hear about. The Saros cycle. Roughly every 18 years, eclipses return in nearly identical geometric alignment. Not identical circumstances, not identical players, but identical architecture in the sky. 18 years. Look back. Think about where the world was 18 years ago. Think about the themes that were rising. The instability, the reinventions, the global recalibrations. Now look at today. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. But when the rhyme becomes obvious, you can no longer pretend it's coincidence. Cycles do not exist to trap humanity. They exist to complete what was left unfinished. When an eclipse family returns, it doesn't rewind the clock, it revisits a theme. Unresolved conversations resurface. Societies reassess values. Collective direction shifts, and individuals feel it too. You may notice old ambitions returning with new urgency. Old doubts resurfacing for resolution. Old wounds asking for closure instead of suppression. That is how cycles function. Not as punishment, as completion. This March 3rd eclipse belongs to one of those long arcs. A lineage of eclipses that historically coincided with recalibration years. Years when humanity quietly questioned itself. Years when systems were pressured into evolution. The tipping point never feels loud at first. It feels like tension, like pressure building behind a dam, like something gathering weight beneath the surface. Then one event, sometimes subtle, sometimes visible, becomes the marker everyone later points to and says, that's when it shifted. We rarely recognize those markers in real time, but we are living inside one. The energy around this eclipse feels different, not because it is supernatural, but because awareness itself has increased. Globally, people are more reflective, more skeptical of surface narratives, more conscious of systemic fragility. When awareness rises at the same time as a cycle returns, the impact multiplies. That is why this moment feels charged, not because the sky is threatening you, but because the pattern is aligning with collective readiness. Cycles return when we are strong enough to face what we avoided the first time. And avoidance has an expiration date. What humanity began confronting 18 years ago was not fully resolved. What conversations were postponed have matured. What fractures were patched have widened. Now, the same geometric alignment reappears above us, not to scare, but to finish. This is where fear-based interpretations fall apart. If eclipses were omens of destruction, civilization would not still be standing after thousands of them. Instead, what we see historically is adjustment, recalibration, evolution under pressure. And pressure is not the enemy of growth. It is the catalyst. The Saros cycle does not predict your fate. It reminds you that growth happens in waves, tension, release, reinvention. That rhythm applies to nations and to individuals. And when the wave crests, you have two choices: resist it and be dragged, or recognize it and move with intention. The ancient astronomers understood something modern culture often forgets. When the sky repeats a pattern, it is an invitation to pay attention, not to panic, to observe. Observation creates clarity. Clarity creates intelligent action. That is the real inheritance of these civilizations. Not superstition, not doom, pattern recognition. March 3rd is not random. It sits precisely within a returning arc. And when arcs close, decisions matter more. Because you are no longer reacting blindly. You are participating consciously in a cycle that has arrived right on time. Now we confront the part almost no one wants to talk about. The eclipse itself was never the danger. Fear was. For centuries, whenever the moon turned red, someone stepped forward claiming to interpret it for everyone else. Kings, priests, generals, leaders who understood one timeless truth. When people are afraid, they are easy to direct. Imagine standing thousands of years ago under a darkening sky with no scientific explanation. The moon, the steady guardian of night, suddenly bleeding into crimson shadow. Crops depended on it. Navigation relied on it. Rituals aligned with it. And then it changed. That disruption alone was enough to shake an entire population. But here's what history quietly reveals. Some rulers used that moment strategically. Wars were paused and blamed on divine signs. Enemies were intimidated by declarations that the heavens favored one side. Entire societies were steered by those who claimed they could interpret the red moon's message, not because the eclipse carried destruction, but because fear amplified authority. Fear makes the nervous system contract. It narrows thinking. It reduces curiosity. It increases compliance. And when the sky performs something dramatic, the emotional response is instant. This is why modern headlines still lean ominous whenever a blood moon approaches. The language is heavy. The tone is dark. The suggestion is always the same. Something catastrophic is coming, but catastrophe sells attention. And attention is power. Here is the reversal no one expects. Not every civilization bowed. Some cultures treated eclipses as clarity tests. They observed who panicked and who remained steady, who surrendered to emotion and who remained grounded in awareness. Those who held composure were considered strong, not because they denied the event, but because they refused to hand their power to fear. That distinction is everything. Because the red moon does not demand panic, it exposes reaction. And reaction reveals conditioning. If ancient leaders weaponized eclipses to manipulate populations, then the real strength today is refusing to participate in that cycle. The real power is staying steady when the narrative around you grows dramatic. Look at how quickly rumors spread during astronomical events. Predictions multiply. Social media fills with apocalyptic language. Speculation snowballs into hysteria, and yet the moon continues its orbit with perfect calm. Nothing about its mass changes. Nothing about its trajectory shifts. Only perception intensifies. That is the lesson. When perception intensifies, you must decide whether to escalate with it or observe it. Fear freezes. Awareness evaluates. Fear seeks immediate escape. Awareness seeks understanding. The eclipse becomes a psychological mirror. Will you react impulsively, or will you hold your center? Because composure under perceived threat is a sign of evolution. This is why the narrative around March 3rd matters so much. If you meet the red moon with dread, your body will mirror that dread. Your decisions will reflect contraction. Your thinking will narrow. But if you meet it with curiosity, something entirely different happens. Curiosity expands cognition. It opens perception. It allows pattern recognition instead of panic response. The blood moon does not feed on fear. It exposes who is governed by it. And that is deeply uncomfortable because it means the eclipse is not testing fate. It is testing awareness. Every dramatic event in human history reveals the same divide: those who surrender to hysteria and those who observe, assess, and act with precision. Eclipses simply compress that divide into a visible moment. This March 3rd is not asking you to be afraid. It is asking you to be conscious. Conscious of the narratives around you. Conscious of the emotional waves rising collectively. Conscious of your own internal reactions. Notice the impulse to catastrophize. Notice the urge to assign cosmic meaning to every tension already present. And then ask yourself, was the instability already there? Because illumination is not creation. The eclipse does not invent cracks in a foundation. It makes them visible. And visibility is uncomfortable for those invested in illusion. That is why fear spreads so quickly around moments of revelation. When truth surfaces, denial resists. When structures weaken, narratives intensify. But clarity requires steadiness. The ancient observers who remained calm understood something profound. The sky is not attacking you. It is reflecting a shift. And shifts are neutral. What determines outcome is response. The red moon becomes symbolic of emotional intensity. But intensity is not destruction. It is amplification. Amplification shows you what is already present. If there is chaos inside, it will feel louder. If there is clarity inside, it will feel stronger. That is the quiet power of this moment. You are not being asked to brace for impact. You are being asked to hold perspective. Perspective dissolves manipulation. Because once you understand how fear has historically been used to control, you become immune to its automatic grip. And immunity to fear is freedom. So when the moon turns red, remember this: it is not a warning siren. It is not a cosmic punishment. It is not a supernatural verdict. It is a phenomenon, a predictable alignment, a shadow passing across reflected light. What gives it meaning is not the sky. It is your state of mind. That is where the real prophecy turns. Not in the heavens, in the human nervous system. Because when you can remain grounded in the face of collective intensity, you step out of reaction and into authorship. And authorship is the opposite of control. The eclipse cannot control you, but your reaction can. March 3rd will reveal which one you choose. Now we arrive at the detail that changes everything. During a total lunar eclipse, the darkness covering the moon is not some invading force. It is Earth's shadow, our shadow. Pause there. The red moon is not being attacked. It is being filtered. The light of the sun bends through Earth's atmosphere, carrying the glow of every sunrise and sunset happening across the planet at that exact moment. That light wraps around the shadow and paints the moon crimson. Nothing about the moon's structure changes. Its gravity remains intact. Its orbit remains precise. Its existence remains steady. Only the way we see it shifts. And that symbolism is not subtle. When the Earth steps between the sun and the moon, it is not creating chaos. It is interrupting distortion. The moon has always represented reflection, emotion, instinct. When Earth's shadow crosses it, something grounding occurs. Reality places its hand over emotional exaggeration and says, "Let's see clearly." This is why so many people feel strangely centered after the intensity of totality passes, because clarity is stabilizing. The shadow is not the villain. The shadow is the filter. Think about how many fears inflate in the dark corners of the mind. How often imagination magnifies uncertainty into catastrophe. How easily narratives spiral when unchecked. Now imagine a moment that compresses all that noise into stillness. That is what this eclipse represents. A reset. Not a dramatic reset that tears your life apart. A subtle recalibration that removes emotional fog. The red tone is not destruction. It is contrast. Contrast allows you to see edges again, to distinguish between what is real and what was projection. And here is the deeper layer. Every human being experiences moments where something familiar suddenly looks foreign. A relationship shifts tone. A dream feels distant. A belief no longer fits. It can feel like loss. But most of the time it is reframing. The object has not disappeared. The light around it has changed. Totality is a masterclass in reframing. For a brief window, the moon appears transformed, yet it remains completely intact. When the shadow passes, it returns to its familiar glow, but you cannot unsee what you witnessed. And that is the power of perspective. This March 3rd eclipse is not here to remove something from you. It is here to show you what remains solid when perception shifts. Because if something collapses under clarity, it was never stable. And if something endures through contrast, it is real. The shadow reveals durability. Now, consider the biological layer. Humans evolved to monitor the sky. For thousands of years, the moon regulated sleep cycles, guided travel, marked harvests. Its consistency created subconscious stability. When that consistency shifts, even briefly, your nervous system notices. Heart rate subtly changes, attention sharpens, awareness heightens. Not because danger is present, because pattern has changed. And humans are creatures of pattern. When a pattern interrupts, consciousness rises. That rise in awareness is what many mistake for dread, but it is simply alertness. The body whispering, "Pay attention." This is why eclipses feel personal even when nothing dramatic happens externally. Your system senses the deviation, and deviation demands presence. Presence is powerful, because when you are fully present, you cannot hide from truth. The Earth's shadow crossing the moon becomes the ultimate metaphor. Grounded reality interrupting emotional distortion. Not to shame you, not to punish you, but to steady you, to remind you what is actually beneath your feet. So, as the sky darkens and the moon turns red, understand this clearly. Nothing is being destroyed. Nothing is being taken. Something is being clarified. The exaggerated fears lose volume. The inflated narratives soften. The essential truths remain. And when the light returns fully, it will not be the moon that changed. It will be your perspective. That is the hidden blessing of totality. It teaches you that darkness is not erasure. It is filtration. And filtration reveals structure. So do not rush to label this moment as ominous. Do not pressure yourself to decode every sensation. Stand still, observe, breathe. Let the shadow pass without resistance, because what remains afterward will be clearer than before. This eclipse is not a threat. It is a turning point in perception, and perception shapes direction. You are not walking into something darker. You are walking into something more honest. Stay grounded, stay aware. And when the red fades and silver returns to the sky, remember, the real shift did not happen above you. It happened within you.